militants in Yemen. The chain of 13 people, dubbed Defense Team Huddle, included his wife Jennifer and his brother Phil Hegseth, who's been hired at the Pentagon. The Associated Press was able to confirm the messages with some of those involved. The Times reports that the second chat shared similar details, like warplane launch times, that were included in a chat that came to light when an editor at The Atlantic was added to the group. Late Sunday, White House Deputy Press Secretary Anna Kelly dismissed the report as a non-story, insisting that no classified information was shared. Multiple officials have said sharing those operational details on an unsecured platform before a strike could have put pilots in danger. Excess use of signal and the sharing of such plans are under investigation by the Defense Department's Acting Inspector General, Jennifer King, Washington.
This is AP News. Houthi rebels say U.S. airstrikes killed 12 people and injured 30 others in Yemen's capital. It's the latest in the U.S.'s intensified campaign targeting the group. Overnight strikes also hit other areas of the country. An Israeli deputy commander has been fired after the Israeli government says it found professional failures in its investigations of the killings of 15 Palestinian medics last month in Gaza. Medics have special protection under international humanitarian law. The International Red Cross called it the deadliest attack on its personnel in 8 years. El Salvador's President Nayib Bukele has proposed a prisoner swap with Venezuela. On X, Bukele directed a post to Venezuela's President Nicolás Maduro saying he would exchange Venezuelan deportees from the U.S. held in his country with political prisoners detained in Venezuela. In his post, Bukele listed off family members of high-level opposition figures in Venezuela and journalists and activists detained during last year's electoral crackdown. I'm Marcela Sanchez, AP News.
This is 8:20 a.m. WCPT Willow Springs and streaming worldwide at WCPT820.com. We are Chicago's progressive talk, where facts matter. Now, your WCPT 820 weather update.
From the Weatherology Weather Center, I'm meteorologist Michael Caro. For today, a slight chance for an isolated shower or thundershower ending early on. Otherwise, mostly cloudy, breezy winds turning to the west, temperatures falling into the mid-50s. Then for tonight, mostly clear, a low of 44. For Tuesday, low 70s for high temperatures, more in the way of sunshine, just a slight chance for a hit-or-miss shower or storm developing late in the day. And that's your latest Chicago weather update. Right now, it's 57.
Seems everything costs more these days. Gas, groceries, and when's the last time you checked your wireless bill? When it comes to big wireless, if you're staying, you may be overpaying. Switch to Consumer Cellular and get your second month free for a limited time. You'll get the same fast, reliable nationwide coverage without the big wireless bill. Plans start at just $20 a month. Here's Veronica and Jackie, real customers.
I didn't know that I could get something for a lot less money that was actually better than who I was with before.
Anytime anybody complains about their cell phone bill, we say, you've got to check out Consumer Cellular.
And now for a limited time, new customers can get their second month free when they use promo code SECONDFREE. Just call, click, or bring us your bill and see how much you can save. Because when it comes to big wireless, if you're staying, you may be overpaying. Call 1-888-FREEDOM, visit a store near you, or consumercellular.com and use code SECONDFREE to get a free second month. Real people pay to share their opinions, and this ad plans include $5 credit for auto pay and e-billing. Taxes, fees, and other third-party charges will apply. See website for additional details.
Hey Google, play WCPT.
Streaming Chicago's progressive talk from TuneIn.
Welcome to Choose Views with Richard Chew. Get ready to dive into a world of insightful conversations and thought-provoking discussions.
As progressives, our job is to have an all-inclusive, full-on assault with all of our players.
A show that will focus on moving our political, social, economic, gender, and cultural conversation forward.
And all of our players means all of our players.
It's Choose Views. And now, here's your host, Richard Chew.
Good Monday morning, progressives. And yes, welcome to the April 21st, 2025 edition of Choose Views, 773-763-9278. Facebook Live, TuneIn Radio, YouTube, and iHeartRadio. Email me at richard@WCPT820.com. And, of course, catch me on Substack. I'm going to post an interesting piece later today. It's probably going to... we'll see. I won't prejudge, but we'll get that up to the site later today. Catch all of our shows by subscribing to our WCPT podcast on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. There you can get Choose Views, short version and long version. Joan Esposito, live, local, and progressive, driving it home with Patty Vasquez. The Big Picture with Edwin Eisendrath. I hope you guys caught his show on Saturday. And Out Chicago and our other great shows and interviews throughout the course of the weekend. Check out our heartlandsignal.com digital platform and most definitely share with the folks that you care about. On today's show, our guests will include Jennifer Walling, ED, that's Executive Director of Illinois Environmental Council. She'll be talking about how we are going to make sure that we've got not only clean air, but clean water, and talking about chemicals that we've got to be mindful of, that we've got to prevent from getting into our water system. State Representative Carol Ammons will be talking about reentry into the workforce and college education for those who've been incarcerated. And then political strategist Mike Nellis will be with us today to talk a little bit about everything when it comes to strategy and some things that happened this weekend with elections in California. So looking forward to chatting with Mike this morning and getting his take on a few things. We're going to talk a little bit in this short window that we have this morning about Trump and his idiocy, and what I believe that the Democratic Party, one of the things that has to be high on the list right now of things that the Dems have to be focused on, I believe, across the board, excuse me, on a national level, on a state, regional, local level, that have to be part of every single conversation and every single bit of messaging, because it is one of the 2 or 3, maybe 4 or 5 things that impacts every single voter, every single person that didn't vote. And I'll get to that when we come back from the first break. But let's get right to it this morning with bringing you a few items from Choose Views News on April 21st, 2025. Could tariffs lead to stagflation? Excuse me, the White House's tariffs agenda could potentially set the stage for higher inflation, slower GDP, and increasing unemployment, according to a report from CNBC, citing a number of economists. The combination of these common conditions is known as stagflation, which is a major issue for the United States and was in the 70s, if you guys were around to remember that or read it in the history books. Experts note, however, that stagflation would likely manifest differently in today's economy, primarily affecting corporate and consumer confidence, which could in turn hurt both spending and investment. Sorry about that, guys. Tariffs could rise the price of tomatoes. Levies on tomatoes imported to the United States from Mexico will be implemented in July unless a new agreement is reached, according to the Wall Street Journal. The Commerce Department recently ended a pact between the two nations that had been in effect for 3 decades. Given that about 70% of tomatoes sold in the United States are currently imported from where? Mexico, Devin. Prices are likely to rise, according to economists, and estimates are 10%. And during a time when there's a lot of tomato consumption is the summer because of salads and picnics and barbecues and all the rest. Tomatoes go into so many of the sauces that we make. I'm just being literal. Barbecue sauce. I mean, the list goes on. But the knucklehead in the White House wants to drop tariffs. And what's that going to do? Increase the price of tomatoes. Now we're going for talking about eggs to tomatoes. Are we addicted to overspending? A DoorDash here, an Instagram inspired vacation there. Americans are stuck in a cycle of chronic spending. Some of that's due to social media, FOMO, fear of missing out. Some of it derives from the feeling that if everything's chaotic, we might as well have fun. But there's also the very high and very unchangeable cost of living. Housing can devour a paycheck. Childcare is nearly as bad. At that point, how much could a little treat help or hurt, really hurt? Again, I'll say that. At that point, how much could a little treat really hurt? So, it's a good question to ask. Are we addicted to overspending? Another American obsession, protein. Now protein candy, protein soda, even protein ice cream, Devin. It's kind of interesting that there's milk. If it's ice cream and it's made from milk, there's probably protein in it. Okay. Americans increasingly want to pump up the protein content of everything they eat. And the check this out, and $67 billion food industry is taking note. Last year, it rolled out 97 new products with protein in the name. More than double the number of 2023, but many fitness and nutrition experts believe Americans are already getting enough protein. The bigger concern, low fiber intake. So if you're wondering why you feel a little bit of a puffy gut, I made Devin smile, y'all. Oh, goodness. That tickles me when I get Devin to crack a smile. All right. Tariffs give Coke the edge in the soda war. After slipping behind Coca-Cola and Dr. Pepper in the U.S. sales, Pepsi-Cola now faces a new obstacle, tariffs. For decades, PepsiCo has imported secret recipe concentrates from Ireland to take advantage of the country's low corporate taxes. But 10% tariffs threaten the soda giant's ongoing efforts to boost its U.S. market share. Coca-Cola, by contrast, sources most of its concentrate from its American sodas domestically. Meanwhile, both companies may be subject to new tariff on aluminum imports. And that means you may have to start pumping out those sodas in bottles, plastic bottles, which is not good for the environment. Vicious cycle, y'all. And last but not least, Home Depot's $20 billion gardening boom. And I just thought I'd chat about this given the time of the year that we are in, particularly here in the upper Midwest and the Northeast. Home Depot may be one of the nation's go-to destinations for residential renovations, but sales in its gardening business are now surpassing lumber, paint, and appliances, according to the Wall Street Journal. With elevated interest rates and steep housing prices curbing residential remodeling projects, gardening has become a, quote, bright spot for the retailer, raking in $20 billion a year in revenue. For context, that's more than Hermes generates all from its entire luxury brands annually. So I think it's because folks are getting out and doing yard work, and I'm one of those people. My wife and I are yard work maven. We love to get out and get in and roll up the sleeves and get after it. And many of you do too. So I think that may have something to do with why people are saying that if they can't, or if they're not going to spend the money on some renovation project with their home because of inflation and prices, that they're going to at least beautify their yard and the place that they live externally. Kind of nice to come home and see a nice looking yard. Nothing wrong with that. All right, guys, there you go. A couple of Choose Views news items here on April 24th, 2025. We'll take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to have some clips for you that I want to get in to talk about what I think and why Democrats need to be focused on a certain particular item. 773-763-9278. This is Choose Views, and we'll be right back.
Check up on health with Chris Whitting.
Parents want to provide the best for their kids. Nutritionist Kelly Dorfman says parents need to put more thought into their child's diet.
It's more powerful than they think. Like most people think about nutrition as related to calories, and so they think they might get heavy if they eat too many Twinkies, but they don't think about if they're eating poorly that it might affect their mood, or it could affect their child's performance at school, or it could be the reason that the child has reflux.
She says food sensitivities can often be hard to track down.
The allergies, most people can figure out for themselves. They eat a shrimp and their throat closes up and they pretty much figure out they're allergic to shrimp. But food reactions can be more subtle. They can happen 24 hours later. They can affect your thinking. They can affect your skin. They can affect your digestive system. And by that time, you've eaten 2 or 3 more meals. And so you may not be able to directly say, oh, it was that peanut or it was that egg.
With Checkup on Health, I'm Chris Whitting.
Hey Google, play WCPT.
Streaming Chicago's progressive talk from TuneIn.
It's Choose View with Richard Chew on WCPT 820, where facts matter.
Welcome back, Progressives to Choose Views, 773-763-9278. We'll get your calls in, but I want to throw something out to you guys that I feel is important that the Democrats focus on. I'm going to say this first, and then we'll hit you with a couple of clips. The Dems, I believe there's so many things to focus on, and rather than but. I don't want to sound like I'm saying don't focus on other things, focus only on this. I do believe that one of the things that has to be at the top of the list, if not at the top of the list, as you heard when I went through Choose Views News, most every item had something to do with cost or inflation or budget, and the list goes on, whether it be for individuals or for corporations. Okay. So I think that the Democratic Party now, and I'm not trying to go back. Today is not the day, or this segment segment is not going to be about what the Dems could have done better or differently. We get all of that. What I'm saying now is a strategy about going forward. There is a thing that we all deal with in one way or another, and that's our budget. And that's our expenses and our living and how we navigate the income and the outgo. We all have that somewhat in common, I believe. So what I really want to say to our Democratic leaders, whoever they are, whatever level they are at, whatever their position is, if they're aspiring to be, we really do want to focus on what I believe is Trump's weakness and has always been one of his weaknesses. Unfortunately, we've been led to believe that he's been a success at it, and that's running a business effectively or budget. Trump's blind spot right now, his weakness is the economy. He's driven a truckload of trucks through the economy. He just has. So I hope that the Democratic leadership, the Democratic voices, I call myself one of them in my capacity, we can stay focused on we're going to talk about a lot of things. We have to, because they all impact us in one way or another, or they might be 2 degrees of separation from, whether it be the environment, just the list goes on. But I got to come back to this because I want to be able to get these 2 clips in. Donald Trump's weakness, his blind spot, is the economy. It's dealing with financial matters. That's his blind spot. We have to keep hammering home 6 times bankruptcies, tanked the casino, other business failures, hurting farmers. The list goes on. We have to keep hammering on that, I believe, as much as we handle the other items. And let me explain, in my view, why that's a universal conversation. Because folks in red districts have come out to town halls, and again, I'm not taking away from any of the importance of immigration and all the rest, and deportation and all the rest. I'm simply saying that folks in red districts have come out because Trump is messing with their money through Social Security threats, through Medicare and Medicaid threats, through the cost of all of these are budget items where he has a history of failing in that way. Don't get faked out by the funk, as the phrase goes, because of the fact that he has been deems himself as a billionaire. How he got there wasn't from business success per se. It was from the high leveraging that he's used. Okay? And branding his name to a great extent. So I won't take away that. That's what he did. That's how he's cooked the books to make it work. But part of the reason that Letitia James is on his behind is because of the fraud and the inability to effectively run businesses in New York. So I'm saying now that part of the fight has to be constantly 24/7 talking about his business failures and that he doesn't get it and that tariffs are harsh and hard and problematic. Darn near every story that I read and went through was about how tariffs are impacting everyday folks and businesses and vice versa. And it's this endless cycle. It affects the business, it affects the consumer, it affects the employee, affects the employee, affects the consumer, affects the business. It's a vicious cycle. It's chaos. So we want to focus on that because that affects all of us. If you're a young voter, young leading voice, if you're middle age or whatever that means now, slightly older than that, all of these groups, all of these generations are impacted by certain things that are in common, and this is one of them. It is financial matters. It is economy. It is inflation. It is the cost of living. It's all of those words, all of those areas. So let's talk about that a little bit. And people that have worked for him that haven't, maybe they should have spoken out earlier. I'm not trying to fix that right now. I'm just trying to say what we want to highlight when it comes to Trump's blind spot. So, Devin, let's go with the first clip that we put together. Donald Trump is a you-know-what.
When Donald Trump was president, I remember crossing that threshold into the Oval Office. And not only was this guy not bringing his A game, he didn't have a game. He was winging it.
Miles Taylor and his Homeland Security Secretary, Kirstjen Nielsen, worked for former President Trump in his administration. Trump once called Secretary Nielsen with a unique solution to stop migrants crossing the border with Mexico.
And she puts the president on speakerphone, and he says that down at the border, he wants to explore what it would take to build a moat. And he goes off on this tangent talking about how we should actually get snakes and alligators and fill this 2,000-mile moat on the border with reptilian creatures so that if someone falls into the moat, they're facing the threat of snakes and alligators. I mean, we're just laughing. You can't make this up.
What are you thinking when the President of the United States is enunciating this idea?
I'm a lifelong conservative. I am more Republican than Donald Trump. He is not a conservative. But putting politics aside, engaging with the man, you realize he's an idiot.
Trump has denied knowing Taylor and said he should be prosecuted.
Okay, blind spot, yes. His total ignorance and lack of awareness, all that is part of the fact that the dude comes to the party not ready and sort of buffoons and shuffles his way through. And we've seen that. So that's part one. You know, listen, guys, we can go after this from all different angles. I'm not about trying to attack Democrats. We know that, you know, I've been criticized, and I'll take it on every day that I don't talk about certain subjects enough. And it can range from the Electoral College. It can range from what Kamala Harris didn't do well enough. It can range from immigration issues. It can range. It can go into gender issues. All of those matter. Don't get me wrong. Anybody that's texting, calling, emailing me, I understand. All of those things matter. Racial issues, culture, all of those matter. The thing that is, because one of the criticisms that comes from within Democratic conversation is the Dems talk about the smaller issues too much. Well, I'm of the mindset that we can talk about all of them. It's just a prioritization. So for those who want to criticize me for not talking about everything all the time, what I'm saying in this moment is we have to I believe, and I'm willing to say that I'm in my belief, maybe I'm not hitting it the way you want me to hit it. But I do believe that we have to prioritize things as it relates to the messaging. And if someone wants to say, well, you're not talking about this enough, then prioritize it. Don't just come at me or come at the conversation from Democratic leadership as, well, you're not talking about this enough without having a percentage to attach to it. 12%. Talk about it. I'm of that mindset. It's what comes most important. When I take on a task or a project, it's like, what do I have to get done first? Where do I put the majority of my energy? Because at some point I'm going to run out of energy. So let me do the heavy work first. Does that make sense, Devin? I mean, you got something to do. You do the hard stuff first. Then you do the lighter stuff. And that's not to put a lesser value on any of our political issues. It's to say, what is it that we most have in common? And that's what I want the Democratic voices to be, is to focus on the things that we most have in common that then are going to be the issues that will pull us together rather than divide us. And along the way, as in the phrase of walking and chewing gum at the same time, we lean into the issues that are also important, and they can be a huge array of those things. So please, y'all, do not get me wrong there. I am not saying we turn our backs on any issues. I'm saying we embrace them all. We just prioritize the ones that Trump is failing at right now. And the biggest one is the economy. Twice he's come into office and blown a hole through an economy that a Democratic president gave him before. Barack Obama did it. Trump had, everybody was, all things are great the first 2 years. And then you started to see the numbers of his dumb A tax policy from 2017 with Paul Ryan. That was a massive failure. But everybody's running around saying, oh, things were great under Trump the first 2 years. And where'd they come from? Barack Obama. But too many knuckleheads are too damn stubborn to acknowledge that and then lean into it. Secondly, now that we're in this second Trump term, what's happened again? Great economy, great numbers from Joe Biden. He's already blown a damn hole in it. Does it sound familiar to Daddy gave him money and he blew a hole through that? It's the same damn thing. It's the same thing. He got money loaned to him by different banks and foreign entities. What did he do? He blew through that. So when are people going to go and say, it's to use the Bill Clinton phrase, it's the economy, stupid, or whatever it was. I don't want to botch that. So y'all could be upset with me. I know Kurt's going to help me out with that one. But once again, he's failed in this area that is kind of our all connective tissue. So Democratic voices, let's lean hard into that. And we're going to go to a clip of which I've got a couple. Today, we're only going to be able to get in one because of respect to our guest. But this is coming from Professor Jeffrey Sachs. And boy, oh boy, does he make it plain.
If you take your credit card and you go shopping and you run up a large credit card debt, you're running a trade deficit with all those shops. Now, it would be pretty strange if you then blamed all the shop owners for having sold you all those things. You're ripping me off. You're ripping me off. You're ripping me off. I'm running a trade deficit. That is the level of understanding of the President of the United States. The trade deficit does not represent at all trade policies. It represents spending relative to production or earnings. We call that an identity. I teach it in the second day of my course in international monetary economics. Trump never made it to the second day.
There you go. Trump never made it to the second day. It was James Carville that said, it's the economy, stupid. Okay. And as I said, Devin, like, I called it. I was immediately going to get people criticizing, saying, Chew, it's not the economy. You're fooling us progressive. You're losing us progressives. It doesn't make any sense. It's why prioritize what doesn't matter? Sometimes I think people send me texts so that I read the text so they know that I think that's part of it. Prioritize everything, but I'm sorry, consider everything. Prioritize what matters the most and connects to most people. And here's why I believe what I'm saying is somewhat right. And I'm not trying to be right. I'm trying to go with what I read and what I heard. Post-election, a lot of people said that the Democratic Party lost a lot of young voters because of the economic considerations, i.e. they saw that the Democratic Party or thought the Democratic Party wasn't talking enough about jobs and opportunities. And the price of eggs is an economic issue. The price of gas, now the price of tomatoes are all economic issues. They are. That doesn't mean that gender equality or racial or cultural equality or hell, my sister and I talked about this weekend. The SAVE Act and women's voting is not a priority. They're all important items. It's a question of prioritizing it so that we go after, because Donald Trump doesn't give a damn about issues surrounding, oh God, what's the word I'm looking for? He doesn't care about ethics. He doesn't really care about those issues. He highlighted them during the election, but he doesn't really care. You can't embarrass him when it comes to social issues because he doesn't care. What he cares about is the money. So I'm saying as a part of how we go back, let me back up. How we attack him right now is to go after his failures when it comes. He doesn't care about his failures with women. Look at how many times he's been married. So that's not to say that that's not important. He doesn't care about. He ran into a barbershop to say that you're sending your boys to school and they come back as girls. He did that to get the clicks. He doesn't care about that issue. Okay. He cares about the money, and he's failing in that space. So I'm looking at this and saying, let's take him on in the space that he cares the most about, that we have provable, verifiable, and connected conversation to go after him on. And that is the Dems need to have a certain amount of focus on the economy and how he's failing. And how Republicans, in a bigger picture, and I'm going to read this and we'll go to a break, have historically failed. In my adult lifetime, Jimmy Carter added $25 billion to the deficit. Ronald Reagan added $74 billion to the deficit. That seemed bad at the time, but just check this out. George H.W. Bush added $102 billion. Bill Clinton reduced the deficit by $383 billion, leaving a surplus. For who? George W. Bush, who added $154 trillion to the deficit. Barack Obama got the deficit down to $585 billion. He reduced it by $825 billion. Donald Trump took that economy and added $2.1 trillion to the deficit. Who reduced it? Joe Biden reduced the deficit by about $940 billion. So we need to go after that which is connected to everybody, in my humble opinion. It doesn't mean the other items are not important. They are important. It's a question of prioritizing those items as a message and as effective policy. All right, Devin, let's take a quick break. The number is 773-763-9278. This is Choose Views, and we'll be right back.
WCPT Replay.
Diversity, equity, inclusion, DEI programs were not designed to do what the right wing is implying that they do, which is to elevate incompetent black people and women into positions that have traditionally been held by competent white men. That's not what they're designed to do. They're designed to do the exact opposite of that, which is make sure that incompetent white men don't get jobs when there are more competent African Americans, Hispanics, Asians, women who could do the job. In other words, DEI is about ending the white old boy network and replacing it with actual merit. And what this administration, the Trump administration, is focused on doing is removing that. Yes, the Trump administration would much rather have incompetent white people in charge. Just look at Pete Hegseth.
Keep listening to WCPT 820 because facts matter.
You're listening to WCPT 820. Here's the latest Chicago weather update.
From the Weatherology Weather Center, I'm meteorologist Michael Caro. For today, a slight chance for an isolated shower or thundershower ending early on. Otherwise, mostly cloudy, breezy winds turning to the west, temperatures falling into the mid-50s. Then for tonight, mostly clear, a low of 44. For Tuesday, low 70s for high temperatures, more in the way of sunshine, just a slight chance for a hit-or-miss shower or storm developing late in the day. And that's your latest Chicago weather update. Currently 58 degrees.
WCPT 820, Chicago's progressive talk, where facts matter.
Choose Views with Richard Chew on WCPT 820, Chicago's progressive talk.
Hey guys, welcome back to Choose Views, 773-763-9278. I told you that there was going to be some folks who got their undies in a bundle, and yeah, they're already chiming in. We'll come back to that because we have a guest holding, and we don't want a leader in the space of the environment to hold any longer. Jennifer Walling is executive director, as I said earlier. Excuse me, guys. Throat's not acting right this morning. I have to have a conversation with it. She's executive director of the Illinois Environmental Council since 2011 and oversees the strategic direction and management of the organization. At the end of the day, what she's trying to do is make sure that our environment is better here in Illinois and throughout the greater United States of America. So good morning. Good morning, Jennifer, and welcome to Choose Views. Thanks for being with us this morning, and thanks for holding.
Yeah, good morning.
How are you doing today?
I'm good. It's rainy, but the day before Earth Day, so looking forward to what we have. Or maybe not looking forward to tomorrow.
Well, it makes it easier to pull weeds and do yard work. The day after a good rain, it makes it a lot easier to go out and do some of the things that are designed, hopefully, to help our environment. I was talking earlier, Jennifer, about one of the things that's happening with Home Depot. And basically, they are, and why this is relevant, you'll see in a moment. They've had a $20 billion gardening boom. Their bread and butter has been, lumber, supplies, appliances, and all the rest. But they had a boom in their not environmental, but in their gardening part of their business. And I think that, I said this is maybe more my opinion than anything else, but somewhat data-based, that people are spending time planting and working in their gardens and doing things that are probably going to fulfill them from the work that they do, as well as the indirect impact on the environment. And so I will take the liberty of saying that you, as one that is a professional in that space, have spent your career making sure that we can do positive things by planting and all those things and gardening and taking care of.
That's right.
But we also have to not do destructive things. And you are leaning hard into that. Let's talk about the bill that that's working towards getting out the use of plastic in our environment.
Yeah, we're really excited this year about a couple of different bills having a shot. And one of them is to ban foam foodware. So, styrofoam, but we can't say that because it's a brand name. To ban all of the foam foodware in Illinois. It's a long runway. And, Montana just banned foam foodware last week. So I'm feeling like we're behind. It's the worst of the worst. It's a carcinogen from start to finish. The people who make it are usually Black and brown people working with a carcinogenic product. So from the worker safety to the end product that doesn't ever degrade, gets into our lakes, into our wildlife, it's time for it to go. And so that one, we're really hoping it's gotten delayed a little bit in the Senate, but we expect a vote in the next 2 weeks. And we're also working on banning plastic bags, so not just a tax, but not having them available anymore at national chains. We're excited about those pieces of legislation and think they have a lot of legs this year, and it'll really help with those Earth Day cleanups and with our overall environmental justice goals.
Well, what do you think that I should say? I don't want to always just use the word voters, but Illinois residents feel about this bill. What do you think is the sort of the common thread right now? What are people thinking? What are you hearing from folks in that space?
Yeah, I think from an individual level, people think it's common sense. Why haven't we done this already? We've been talking about foam foodware being a problem since the 70s and 80s, being something that was litter. And I think people understand that it's wasteful, it's litter. I'm sure there's going to be some commenters who call it stupid or frivolous to be working on this, and there's so many other problems. But, this is something that I think people want to see. People are not going to go to a restaurant to get takeout so that they can get styrofoam. They want their food, and they're given this option. They don't have an option when they get their takeout. It's something that is problematic for their health and problematic for their environment, and people don't want that.
This may get into a little bit of the science of this conversation, but what are the impacts or what is the impact, or if there are more, of, you just talked about takeaway food. We get something that's takeaway, and it's in styrofoam versus a paper box. As I guess a good example would be you go and get a pizza, and you order a salad. The pizza's in a box, and sometimes the salad's in styrofoam. So what are the scientific or medical impacts of food coming to us in those single-use sort of foam foodware containers?
Yeah, well, two pieces. I will say polystyrene foam foodware expanded its foam. It's made out of styrene, which we know to be a carcinogen. and it's made into a form that is supposed to be non-reactive. But everybody knows you have too hot food that touches styrofoam, it melts into it. You put it in the microwave. They never tell you don't put it in the microwave. You're not supposed to put styrofoam in the microwave. And so those things can be really problematic from a carcinogenic perspective. But what we worry about even more with all plastics, whether it's a plastic water bottle or wrapping, is microplastics. And scientists have now found a whole spoon of plastic in people's brains. These little plastics are in our bodies, they're in fish, they're in water, and there's various things that we're learning about how they contribute to human health, whether it be carcinogenic or interference with our organs, or leaching chemicals into our bodies. So it's not good to have all these microplastics in our bodies, and it even starts now with babies. So it's just sort of a universal thing that's getting worse and worse. We're getting more and more of them. And so it definitely is, it's scary to think about from a human health perspective.
So and thank you for that, Jennifer. So the amount of pushback that I always try to approach these conversations from who are the allies and who's pushing back. So let's talk about who might be pushing back in this space and who is saying that, this is crazy. We don't need to spend time and money. You know the conversations because you've been doing this for a long time. But who's pushing back and why?
Well, number one on plastic bans is the oil and gas industry is funding oppositions to these because this is their product. And as we see oil maybe decline on an international level, you need more uses for them. So that's number one. And, of course, they're extremely well funded, so hard to go after. And in Illinois, we're seeing manufacturers of the product, the chemical industry move forward. And, of course, we're also concerned about workers and what jobs they will have. But those companies could make that decision, and we're giving them enough time in both bills to retool and work towards something new. And so I think that is where we're directly, it's kind of a fight really against the fossil fuel industry. And I think we're seeing, when we're talking about both bills, we've negotiated them with parties in Illinois, and even the foam foodware bill, the restaurants are not delighted about it, but they're not opposing it and they're not working against it. I think that many restaurants have transitioned, especially as we move towards more of a delivery and takeout economy. Styrofoam doesn't hold up as well as other products do, whether it's paper or other less carcinogenic plastics. But I think that we're not seeing as much opposition from on-the-ground retailers because they know and they need to move over to something else.
So what, I inevitably will turn to ask a question because it's relevant to the environment. The Trump administration has, by example, not given a darn in the first term and the current term about the environment or items that are relevant to keeping the environment strong and safe. And I would gather that there's got to be some concern that you have about not just this bill, but the environment at large when it comes to what the federal administration is putting out there and also taking us away from when it comes to money, when it comes to support. And you said oil and gas industry is a big player in the pushback. What are you seeing? What are your thoughts or concerns when it comes to the federal administration in this space?
Yeah, in this job, it's always frustrating and hard, and I try to remain positive and strong, but I have to admit that I'm scared. When I see all of the things that have been done already and the things that are in front of us, I'm scared for individual people whose lives are being impacted because they're being targeted. So that's number one. But in the first few days, getting rid of environmental justice. So we're not going to look anymore at where the worst of the worst pollution is. And we're not going to work to improve people's lives in those communities that have been impacted over decades. So getting rid of environmental justice, looking at defunding the Inflation Reduction Act, maybe in the future defunding federal money that goes to our Environmental Protection Agency. There's an executive order dismantling things like the Endangered Species Act, et cetera. And we've heard rumors about what will happen on Earth Day, and we're definitely concerned about ways that the Trump administration will target climate and environmental justice on Earth Day, which is supposed to be a day of celebration of the work that we're doing. I've always thought what I was doing was good work and charitable, and these folks are viewing the great work that we've done as being threatening to people, and well, at least to them and to their interests. And I haven't said this in my whole career before, but I'm scared.
Well, okay.
I mean, I do feel supported. I feel supported by a lot of people out there. You know, we got a lot of support, and that feels good. But you know, I'm scared for what'll happen.
When you say you're scared, and I when I hear those words, I pause everything that's going on in my brain and ask a person to kind of dig down. Whatever my next thinking might be, I have to shut that down because I want to address that. When you say you're scared, if you can, share with us what you're really scared about or scared for.
Yeah, well, I mean, of course, I start with the individual level of how people within our movement are being targeted, and I know we have a lot of allyship. So, like, that's where I start with being scared. But you know, I think there's a lot of ways that our work can be impacted, including going after our organizations, going after us as people. You know, we're people who have been trying to do the right thing and trying to protect people, and are we enemies now? And that definitely makes me really nervous. And I'm going to keep doing this work. There's nothing that's going to stop me. You know, but it does make me nervous of what might happen.
Yeah, I get it now. I didn't want to make any assumptions, so that's why I wanted to ask you that question, Jennifer. One of the things, I try to be reasonably aware when someone says something like that, so that we can press pause and try to address it. Let's, to the best of our ability, look to what there are in terms of a couple things that you would recommend that folks, everyday folks like me, like you, and all the rest of us can be doing to offset or to, you know, sometimes you can't always, pushing back means holding the line sometimes. So what is it that we can do as regular individuals, regular folks, when it comes to our impact on the environment and in this space of plastic use? I mean, you've got a laundry list of things, but just hit our listeners with a couple of the ones that you think that we can be doing to have impact.
Yeah, well, and you're going to hear me hear a strange one. And the first, which is just, for all of this, build your community. Make sure that you have close relationships that are in your community. One of the best ways to solve a climate emergency or an extreme weather event is to know your neighbors. So making sure that we know that, we build that, we support each other is my number one item for protecting the environment right now. And then I definitely, you know, there are so many changes we can and should make in our daily lives to replace out plastic with paper. But ultimately, I think in any of these, we're going to do them, we're going to get frustrated, and that's going to lead us to try to take action with advocacy. And, you know, I do want people to do their best, but also have compassion for themselves because, you know, sometimes you got to be convenient. And it's not your fault that what you're being provided is something that's damaging your health. That's ultimately something that the government needs to do. So I want people to stand up and ask our officials to make those changes so that we don't have to choose between convenience and our health ever. And so build your community, become an advocate. Those are two of the things that I think are most important.
I like one of the ones that you guys put out called Skip the Stuff. And this one just really resonated with me, and that is unwanted single-use plastic utensils that pile up in our homes that we get when we get some sort of a takeout order. Basically, I think what you're saying is when we do that, we shouldn't even get them. We don't necessarily need to get the ongoing utensils that come in a little plastic bag with the napkin and the knife and the fork and or spoon, because we already have so many of them. And if you're getting takeout that's going to go to your home, you probably don't need those utensils. Is that kind of what you're saying?
Exactly. And we shouldn't just be given them without being asked about them. There are a bunch of states and communities, well, California especially. California is going even further and working at unbundling those items. But we do have a bill as well that has gotten through the House, is in the Senate, that would require those third-party delivery apps to ask you if you want it and then not give it to you, which I think is the problem in Chicago. They ask you and then they give it to you anyway. Mm-hmm. And so this is one that's enforceable. It's statewide, and we're really going to work on it. And it should save businesses money. You know, they feel like they have to do it because somebody's going to yell at them and complain if they don't put those utensils in there. But, you know, we've all got that drawer of them at home, and I'm really careful about it. Even if I get takeout, I may give it back to the cashier. But you know, even I'll get some stuff in every once in a while that I didn't notice was in the bag. And so I think not taking it and working hard to not use as much stuff is so important.
Well, we try to have someone that's an environmental expert, person that's leaned into it more than we do on the show every week, because it's a big deal. It's hugely important. My wife reminded me this weekend, we were doing some yard work and talking about our next project, and she said, you know, we really need to invest more in the paper bag disposal rather than the plastic bags that we use for some of the, you know, large yard work that we do. And I thought about it for a moment. I went, yes, she's absolutely right. And that's just one. That's a small one, but it's a big one. And you know, I had to think about that as in my own world as a way to do a little bit of a better job in that space of something that I love to do, which is yard work. And so I'm sure you probably would agree with my wife in this space.
Yeah, definitely. The more we transition away, you know, paper is often recycled nowadays. There's so much of it out there. So, you know, we need to make that transition for our health and for our environment, for our wildlife. Yeah. I mean, they're even finding microplastics in the soil now, and that's a piece to keep it out of our gardens. We got to do that work.
Yeah. I'm glad to see that this bill is got some legs and some strength and energy behind it. And, of course, you are one of the catalysts that's helping to make sure that this does get moved forward with all the things that you're working on. We're going to have you back to talk about some of the other consumer products bills that you're working on as it relates to things that need to be phased out. But, Jennifer, I appreciate you taking the time out of your busy schedule to be with us this morning and talk a little bit about something that we all can lean into and have a little bit more impact on, and that's protecting our environment and working hard to preserve what we have. How can folks find you? How can folks maybe get involved or at least keep track of what you are working on?
Yeah, we are IL Enviro on all social media and our website. That's where you can find items to take action. There is an action alert on our website right now to contact your lawmaker. So IL Enviro on all of those. Really appreciate you sharing the word and having us on.
Absolutely. Jennifer, thanks for being with us today. We will have you back in a few weeks to talk about the next bill and other things that you're working on, because we know it matters and it's hard work, and we appreciate you having the strength and courage to be in that space. So thanks for being with us, Jennifer. We'll talk with you soon. Thanks a lot. Have a great day today.
Thank you.
All right. Bye now. There you go, guys. Jennifer Walling, who is the executive director of the Illinois Environmental Council, and she is doing the phrase goes, the Lord's work, but when it comes to the environment, she definitely is one of the leaders. Check her out. Her name is Jennifer Walling, Walling, and it's the Illinois Environmental Council. It's something that impacts us all, and I think that we can do a better job of helping organizations like this by reaching out to them and finding out if they need volunteers, how you can get involved. And this goes back to something that I've been saying for months, and particularly since the election, is if you're challenged with how do I have impact, this is one of those categories that, you know, you can get involved in and with. And I think that this is an opportunity for any one of us to find ways. And sometimes, when it comes to things like this, and that can be very nuanced and some may even say a little bit nerdy, like how do I help the environment? Sometimes it's just basic common sense things, but we all slip past that. We all do. None of us are immune to that. We leave the water running too long. We leave a light on in a different room. We sit in the car idling, and then the list goes on. Little things. Having an environmental council like that you can contact, and you might be in California listening or anywhere in the country listening, you probably have an organization like that in your state. And whether you do or you don't, an organization like this here in Illinois Environmental Council, can help you with things in your own state. So reach out to them and see where you can help and have an impact in the work that they do. And I think that it will probably give you, I guess, a little bit of air in your wings as it relates to this other common thing that we have. So I want to circle back to something before we went to talking with Jennifer that I think is really important to lean into. I made it clear that when I talked about what the Democratic voices, leaders, all of us should be thinking about, I made it clear that prioritizing is important. I did not say that that anything else is not important. And then, frankly, I've worked real hard not to say less important. I said as it relates to as we go forward. We cannot correct the past. The way to correct the past, if you want to even go down that path, is to look at what's happened in the past history and try to learn from it. So that's learning from it and going forward. But it's not correcting the past. I mean, literally, it's not. It's how do we take that lesson and go forward? And there's a lot of lessons, guys. I recognize that some of you feel that the Electoral College is more important. Some feel that the LGBTQ community and the conversations there and is more important. And some of you feel that any number of issues, foreign policy is more important. For me, racism, sexism, nationalism, and privilege are hugely important. And they had a massive impact on our election most recently. And they have massive impacts ongoing. But I want to be perfectly clear with anybody, whether you quote unquote side with me or don't. I'm aware of all of those issues. I am not unaware of any of them. The luxury that I have as being a black man in America is that all of those issues I have to see. Let me be clear. All of those issues I have to see. And when I talk about or take a position of prioritizing some things that we need to win, the data does say that the economy is one of the big ones that we all have in common. It's not to say that other issues are not important. It's about winning, learning from our mistakes in the past, and then going forward to take back the House, the Senate, state legislatures, governor's mansions, and the White House. And I'm saying this to be very clear. Prioritizing is important. It's not saying other items are not important. They all are. But we have to win going forward. And Donald Trump has shown a blind spot in how he's wrecked the economy. And that's what I want to be perfectly clear on for those who may either have missed the message or have intentionally decided to not hear the message. So let's take a quick break. The number is 773-763-9278. This is Choose Views, and we'll be right back.
This is a WCPT 820 20th Anniversary News Minute.
Thank you, Chicago, for this humbling victory. All I can say, you sure know how to make a guy feel at home.
That's Chicago Mayor-elect Rahm Emanuel speaking February 22nd, 2011, after winning 55% of the vote in a 6-candidate contest.
What makes this victory most gratifying is that it was built on votes from every corner of the city. From people who believe that a common set of challenges must be met with a common purpose. It's a victory for all those who believe that we can overcome the old divisions and the old ways that have held Chicago back. It is easy to find differences, but we can never allow them to become divisions.
When he was sworn in as mayor that May, Emanuel became Chicago's first Jewish mayor. I'm Mike Mercado for WCPT 820, Chicago's Progressive Talk since 2005.
Now at Verizon, we have some big news for your peace of mind. For all our customers, existing and new, we're locking in low prices for 3 years guaranteed on My Plan and My Home. That's future you peace of mind. And everyone can save on a brand new phone on My Plan when you trade in any phone from one of our top brands. That's new phone peace of mind. Because at Verizon, whether you're already a customer or you're just joining us, we got you. Visit Verizon today. Price guarantee applies to then current base monthly rate. Additional terms and conditions apply for all offers.
For nearly 2,000 severely injured veterans, everyday life has become filled with barriers. So we build specially adapted homes at Homes for Our Troops. And thanks to our donors and supporters, this life-changing gift of freedom is provided mortgage-free to these veterans. But we need you to join us, too, in completing this important mission. Please visit hfotusa.org and help build homes and rebuild lives.
Need to hire quality candidates fast? You need Indeed. Our video interview tool makes it easy and effortless to meet with candidates. Visit Indeed.com/credit.
AP News, I'm Marcela Sanchez. The Vatican announced Pope Francis has died a day after delivering his final blessing on Easter Sunday.
Francis was history's first Latin American pontiff who charmed the world with his humble style and concern for the poor, but alienated some conservatives with critiques of capitalism and climate change. Francis suffered from chronic lung disease and had part of one lung removed as a young man. He was admitted to Gemelli Hospital in Rome on February 14 for a respiratory crisis that developed into double pneumonia. He spent 38 days there. On February 12 this year, Pope Francis told the faithful, I think about the so many countries at war. Sisters, brothers, let's pray for peace. Let's do our best for peace. Don't forget that war is a defeat, always. Francis signalled a different tone for the papacy, stressing humility over hubris for a Catholic Church beset by scandal and accusations of indifference. I'm Charles de Ledesma.
AP correspondent Jennifer King reports on a second signal chat involving Secretary Hegseth.
The New York Times is reporting that Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth had a second signal messaging chat where he shared details of a March military airstrike against Houthi militants in Yemen. The chain of 13 people, dubbed Defense Team Huddle, included his wife Jennifer and his brother Phil Hegseth, who's been hired at the Pentagon. The Associated Press was able to confirm the messages with some of those involved. The Times reports that the second chat shared similar details, like warplane launch times, that were included in a chat that came to light when an editor at The Atlantic was added to the group. Late Sunday, White House Deputy Press Secretary Anna Kelly dismissed the report as a non-story, insisting that no classified information was shared. Multiple officials have said sharing those operational details on an unsecured platform before a strike could have put pilots in danger. Hegseth's use of signal and the sharing of such plans are under investigation by the Defense Department's Acting Inspector General. Jennifer King, Washington.
This is AP News. Houthi rebels say U.S. airstrikes killed 12 people and injured 30 others in Yemen's capital. It's the latest in the U.S.'s intensified campaign targeting the group. Overnight strikes also hit other areas of the country. An Israeli deputy commander has been fired after the Israeli government says it found professional failures in its investigations of the killings of 15 Palestinian medics last month in Gaza. Medics have special protection under international humanitarian law. The International Red Cross called it the deadliest attack on its personnel in 8 years. El Salvador's President Nayib Bukele has proposed a prisoner swap with Venezuela. On X, Bukele directed a post to Venezuela's President Nicolás Maduro saying he would exchange Venezuelan deportees from the U.S. held in his country with political prisoners detained in Venezuela. In his post, Bukele listed off family members of high-level opposition figures in Venezuela and journalists and activists detained during last year's electoral crackdown. I'm Marcela Sanchez, AP News.
This is 8:20 a.m. WCPT Willow Springs and streaming worldwide at WCPT820.com. We are Chicago's progressive talk, where facts matter. Now, your WCPT 820 weather update.
From the Weatherology Weather Center, I'm meteorologist Michael Caro. For today, a slight chance for an isolated shower or thundershower ending early on. Otherwise, mostly cloudy, breezy winds turning to the west, temperatures falling into the mid-50s. Then for tonight, mostly clear, a low of 44. For Tuesday, low 70s for high temperatures, more in the way of sunshine, just a slight chance for a hit-or-miss shower or storm developing late in the day. And that's your latest Chicago weather update. Right now, it's 57.
Ready to turn heads? Find your new Porsche at the Porsche Exchange in Highland Park and add iconic style to every drive. Stop in today to browse and test drive the latest models, including the 2025 Porsche Cayenne. And right now, lease the 2025 Macan Electric for only $999 a month for 39 months. Find style, power, and your new Porsche today. Shop electric Porsche models and more by visiting the Porsche Exchange in Highland Park or PorscheExchange.com. $8,609 with signing. Excludes tax, title, license, and dock fee. No security deposit required. Expires 4/30/25.
This is WCPT 820, where facts matter.
Welcome to Choose Views with Richard Chew. Get ready to dive into a world of insightful conversations and thought-provoking discussions.
As progressives, our job is to have an all-inclusive, full-on assault with all of our players.
A show that will focus on moving our political, social, economic, gender, and cultural conversation forward.
And all of our players means all of our players.
It's Choose Views. And now, here's your host, Richard Chew.
Hey, progressives, welcome back to Choose Views, 773-763-9278. Definitely want to get your calls. Give us a holler. There are a lot of people who have questions and thoughts about my position on Trump's weak spots. And it was stated that maybe rather than blind spot, we use weak spot or Achilles heel. That's a good point. His Achilles heel would be a good way of putting it. It's blind spot. We can use that. We can use weak spot, but definitely Achilles heel. So we'll get back to that in a second. Just to let you guys know what's happening, and we all know really what's going on in the country and corporate media, and their sanitized narratives aren't helping. Sometimes we got to be a little bit more forceful in what we say. But when the White House Correspondents' Dinner fires comedians, it's time we take back the mic and brutally mock them in the process. So join us, the Political Voices Network, for Not the White House Correspondents' Dinner, pay-per-view on Saturday, April 26th at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. This isn't just a comedy show. It's a no-holds-barred takedown of media hypocrisy, political BS, and watered-down news cycles, with over a dozen fearless comics and pundits bringing truth with punchlines. Here's the difference between what they're doing and what we do. They get to curse, which is a good thing. Including John Fugelsang, Hal Sparks, Alonzo Bowden, Trey Crowder, a.k.a. the liberal redneck, Glenn Kirshner, Allison Gill of Muller, She Wrote, Brooklyn Dad Defiant, Dean Obadala, JoJo from Jurors, TV's Frank Conniff, and many more with special guest Elaine Boozler. Catch Not the White House Correspondents' Dinner live on Saturday, April 26th, instead of that other thing, or stream it on demand for $20.26, because that's a good number to think about. Head over to meethook.live/not to get your ticket and join us in supporting free speech. Because when they silence the comedians, we get louder. Not the White House Correspondents' Dinner, for Americans who aren't afraid of comedians and free speech. Now, what's our part in this? The third caller that says, I want the streaming gift, will get a streaming gift. So it's third caller that says, I want the streaming gift, starting right now. You'll get a free streaming access for the Not the White House Correspondents' Dinner. All right, wanted to make sure we get that in. Also, make sure that you are paying attention and tuning in to Joan Esposito today on Live, Local, and Progressive. She'll be talking to Carolyn Shapiro of Chicago Kent College's Law Institute on the Supreme Court. Salon.com's Amanda Marcotte and Illinois State Treasurer Michael Frericks. Live, Local, and Progressive weekdays, 2 to 5 p.m. Central. 20 years progressive talk, y'all, here in Chicago. Tonight on Driving It Home, Patty Vasquez will be joined by John Fugelsang, plus Dr. Michelle Caroulas, Associate Professor at the Family Institute at Northwestern University, positivity proponent and podcaster Jen Zanotti, and more. Driving it home with Patty Vasquez, weekdays 5 to 7 p.m. Central, WCPT 820 a.m., Heartland Signal website, TuneIn, YouTube, and Facebook. And tomorrow on my show, Benga Ajili-Ray will be with us, chief economist at the Center on Budget and Policy Priorities, and Winfred Ferguarneson, Democrat, decomposed ensemble member and violinist, will be with us. Tongue tires, y'all. Listening live, make sure you tune in 6 to 8 a.m. here for our show. And, of course, going back to our voicemail, WCPT celebrates 20 years on the air. We want to hear from you. We want to hear your WCPT story. Call 773-467-8202 today and leave a voicemail. We'll be playing some of the messages on the air, and you guys have already left a few for me, so we'll get to those this week. That number again is 773-467-8202. A recording of Patty Vasquez will be there to greet you with suggestions for recording your story. How about that? And then guess what? Next Saturday, not next Saturday, but May 3rd, let me keep the dates right. As you guys know, our tickets are sold out for our anniversary at Max and Benny's Restaurant. But we hope you'll tune in on that day between 11 and 3 to hear Hal Sparks, Patty Vasquez, Scott Duff, Joan Esposito, and myself broadcasting live with special guests. The event is sponsored by Max and Benny's, Fazio Insurance, Mart 265, the Democratic Party of Kane County, and Southland Friends of Labor, Democratic Party of McHenry County, as well as the McHenry County Democratic Women. Be sure to visit our anniversary website where you can find details about the special broadcast and photo and sound galleries that document our 20-year history. How about that? Of course, the address is heartlandsignal.com/anniversary. How about that? Boy, oh boy, oh boy. Busy time here at WCPT. So I want to come back to a topic. Priorities. What should we be focused on? Focused on all of it. But right now, the as it was sent to me by one of our listeners, Jennifer, Achilles' heel is where Donald Trump is weak. All the other areas, we know they're important to our voting block and the things to get people off the sidelines that didn't vote. Many people will say, well, Richard, the Electoral College stinks, and I know, and my vote doesn't matter, so why should I vote? I get that, and that's a topic that we have to lean into more. I'll be the first to admit that, because I understand, like many people who criticize me in this space, I understand why the Electoral College is there in the first place, how it was created, and why it was created. So believe me, I'm a big advocate of getting rid of it, and popular vote is what we should be leaning into. How do we fix racism in America? I'm not one that says don't talk about it, it'll go away. I'm of the mindset that says we talk about it, we call it out in every shape, form, and fashion. Don't be afraid to call out racism. Don't be afraid to call out sexism. Don't be afraid to call out this sort of Christian nationalism. That's the first step, is to talk about it. When you see it, call it out. As a guy, if you see sexism taking place in your workplace, you should be willing to stand up and call it out. If some of your buddies are running around saying things behind their back, you have a big meeting in the conference room, and the person that's leading the meeting is a woman, and when she leaves the meeting and the guys that are there sitting with you at the table start to snicker and say nasty things about her, and you're a guy sitting across the table, you want to deal with sexism, say something to the whole table at that moment. That's how you start dealing with sexism. When a black person is the person giving that presentation, and they walk out of the meeting and you see people making negative comments about that person's racial identity and culture and community, call it out, white America, in the moment. That's how we start to deal with racism on the ground level. So how that plays into our election, You call it out and don't say that you voted. When you see people say I voted for the economy, and I don't want to sound hypocritical, I know how important, and that's why I brought up Trump's, what I said for those, again, I made it clear. Donald Trump has a blind spot. It's a weak spot. It's an Achilles heel right now when it comes to the economy. I did not say that racism and sexism and all the rest were not important and weren't also areas of weakness. I said he doesn't give a damn about those. Now, in this most recent election, we know that people head faked on it was about the price of milk, the price of gas, the price of eggs, and all the rest, the economy, if you will. But that's not what a lot of people, that was how people said what they said they were voting about and for, when in reality it was because she's a black woman, a Southeast Asian woman, and a woman. We know that, and I'm fully aware of that. I'm also saying that Donald Trump doesn't give a damn about that, because his policies, or not even his policies, he doesn't have any policies. His executive orders are all about taking away the economic empowerment of so many people, and that includes women, that includes folks of color, of all communities. So listen sometimes, but don't repeat. One of our biggest problems as human beings is our predisposition to our own thinking. I'm at fault at it. I'm going to be the first to raise my hand and say I'm at fault for that. Our predisposition to our own thinking, I believe, prevents us from listening to what someone else has said in an objective way. So I'm leaning into this because I don't want anybody, let me put this in a positive. I want people to understand I get it. And I sometimes not pick and choose, but I pick what I see is happening that we have to talk about in the moment, realizing that the other things are also important. Because I guarantee you on a different day, I'm leaning hard on racism. For those who think that I missed the boat on racism when it comes to this election. No, I didn't. And I missed the boat on sexism. No, I didn't. I had people in my own family that said to me that Kamala Harris wasn't going to win because she was a woman. So I didn't miss the boat on that. Just to be perfectly clear, her policies may not have been hot enough and sexy enough for everybody and didn't talk about this, that, or the other enough. But one thing we can all agree on is this. One thing that we can definitely agree on when it comes to what happened in this election, good, bad, or indifferent, is that we have to learn from whatever lessons there are so that we can win and go forward. And I know that Devin, there's some people that you talk with that they say they're on your side in terms of something, or that they say that they're on the team with you, and you'll never be able to say enough to make them happy or to have them, to be able to find a common ground with that person. That's just part of life, I believe. Members of our family, that's why in our communication with family members, we love them, but sometimes we don't always like them, and they feel the same way about us. So one of the things that I won't do on this show is bend myself into a pretzel to try to make everybody happy. It's impossible to do that, and I'd be a hypocrite if I did it anyhow, so that's not going to happen. For those who text, email, call, I will be always open to hear what you have to say, and leaning in the direction to try to find a way to make it better for all of us. That's the key thing for all of us. Making it better, not making it perfect. I'm just telling you, if that's your expectation of me, then I probably won't meet your standard. It's just, I probably won't meet your standard, and I accept that. And I know that there's nothing that the one thing that is interesting to watch is the consistency of the people that criticize you and compliment you. And when it comes to, politics, I think that that's one of the things that a lot of our politicians, we want them to do a better job of, and we want that of ourselves, is to do a better job of listening to those who criticize us and listening to those who compliment us. But in this space right now, I am fully aware of the issues. not an expert on all, don't know everything about everything. And these are my own, this is me taking swipes at myself. But one thing for certain is that will continue to happen here is that we have to spend more time focusing on the quote unquote political enemy than on focusing on tearing down ourselves. We as Democrats spend way too much time doing that. And I'm going to talk a little bit about that tomorrow. We spend way too much time tearing each other down rather than building each other up. That doesn't mean we can't be observant of the things that we need to fix. And at the same time, we have to stop taking swipes at each other. Do you realize how destructive that is without building us up? I make a choice to try to build us up. I make a conscious choice to not try to tear us down inside of our own family of Democrats and communication with each other. And to that end, I think that when we talk about, when I spoke earlier to what I believe we should focus on, what should be our priority, it's looking at where we are right now. Right now, Trump is failing with the economy. He's failing on immigration. He doesn't give a damn about racism right now or sexism right now. If he does, it's a small percentage. He wants to prove he's this economic savant and business savant. Let's cut him off at the knees in that space. That doesn't mean the other areas are not important. And I'm not defending my position. I'm saying look at the data. Is the market down right now, Devin, or is it up? It's down, right? Okay, economic failure. Are tariffs causing havoc with our economy and with businesses, or is it making them all happy? What would you say, Devin? What would be your response?
The ceiling is going that lower.
I don't see businesses running around going, yes, we're excited about this. There might be a few, but more businesses than not are showing by laying off people, by buying up goods early because they know. So that's an Achilles heel. That's an opportunity to take the message to his economic failure at this moment. Now, in 6 months, it could be that and something else. It could be that the issue at the southern border has gotten further out of hand. Then we take that message and we go after him with that. Okay? And if we structurally see a lot of people who criticize the conversation around the Electoral College don't know what it really takes to get rid of the Electoral College. I have a few people in my camp that understand what we have to do that. So to that end, I would like to see us be focused on the things right now as part of our strategy that are Donald Trump's Achilles heels, that are the administration's Achilles heels. And there may be more. I will be the first to acknowledge and admit there may be more. Right now, the economy has got more people freaked out. It's not to say that the others are not important, and I keep coming back to that because I want to be clear. Right now, more people, a large number of Americans, and look at who's showing up at the town halls. Yes, we know that they may have said, I'm voting on the economy, but they were actually voting against a black Southeast Asian woman, against her, when they should have been voting against the havoc that their vote caused in voting for Donald Trump. But as progressive liberal Democrats, we have to be willing to say our messaging, our effort, our energy, we got to collectively push forward there, not have internal fights publicly, and fight against what the Republicans are doing, which is causing havoc on our economy, and take that message and make that part of how the failure of Donald Trump in that space, because that's his thing. That's his thing. He wants, if people don't see that, then I don't know what you're paying attention to. That Donald Trump has never cared in his political presentation about the sanctity of women. If he did, he wouldn't have leaned into taking away a woman's right to choose, and leaned more effectively into reproductive rights. So I'm not saying we don't focus on that. I'm saying, and clearly, he hasn't cared about, as he said, the people in the Middle East. And he doesn't give a damn about the people in Ukraine. He cares about the Russians more than the Ukrainians. And he clearly doesn't care about providing safe haven for people that are coming to this country. And when people say to me, well, Democrats are embracing illegals. Well, Republicans are embracing illegals too, but just a lot of people, and sometimes I think it's bots, don't want to talk about that. Republicans are embracing illegals, if you want to put it to the test. But a lot of times, I think that people don't want to look at that. They don't want to talk about that. Republicans are doing what you say Democrats are doing as well. But guys, whether you trust me on this or not, that's not the goal. The goal is to say, what are his Achilles heels? And what is the biggest one? And I think that the common thread is the economy. Because here's the thing. When I hear people say, I'm so upset with the Dems for talking about the conversation around trans folks in sports, and that the Dems shouldn't have spent any time talking about that. I'm not going to debate that, because that would then be saying that we don't care about that community, which would be wrong. But that's not to say that other issues should not be talked about either. We have to talk about all of them. It's prioritization, guys. It just is. And I know there are people that are probably going, Richard's lost his mind, and that's okay. And if you don't follow that logic or that thinking, I understand that. I truly do. And I respect that it's your position to say and to think and to feel that. At the same time, if we don't focus on the things that matter to the most amount of people without giving up on the other items that matter to large amounts of people, then we will have failed ourselves. And maybe take a look at yourself in the mirror, as I do with myself. I hear the criticisms from folks that listen, that text, that call, that email, that write. I hear them, I see them, I read them, I review them, and I take a pause and go, okay, how do I want to address this? But as a party, if we don't take the position that right now we attack where the weaknesses are with in the federal government, specifically this administration, I think we're losing the opportunity to have a message that a large amount of people are going to want to hear, and at the same time pulling in the other messages. So there you go. We're going to take a little bit of an early break, because I know that we've got our guest Mike Nellis is probably going to be with us at 7:30. So we'll see what happens. And maybe we'll have to reschedule Representative Carol Ammons for another day. All right, guys, let's take a quick break. Number 773-763-9278. We'll be right back.
Thanks to our loyal WCPT listeners, the WCPT 20th anniversary broadcast is officially sold out. But you can still enjoy the broadcast by listening to WCPT Radio on Saturday, May 3rd from 11 a.m. to 3 p.m. Hal Sparks will kick things off at 11 a.m., then hand it off to WCPT hosts Richard Chu, Joan Esposito, Patty Vasquez, and Scott Duff at 1 o'clock. Surprise guests from WCPT's 20-year history will also join us. Scroll through 20 years of WCPT Radio with legendary interviews, shows, and pictures on the WCPT 820 website. WCPT's live broadcast is sponsored by Max and Benny's Restaurant in Northbrook, Fazio Insurance, Smart 265, Kane County Dems, Southland Friends of Labor, Democratic Party of McHenry County, and McHenry County Democratic Women. It's the WCPT 20th anniversary live broadcast Saturday, May 3rd from 11 a.m. to 3 p.m. Only on WCPT 820, Chicago's only progressive talk radio station for 20 years.
Advertisement sponsored by Allied Injury Group, not available in all states. This important message from Allied Injury Group reminds you that if you or someone you love was injured in an accident that wasn't your fault, you deserve financial compensation for your medical expenses, lost wages, pain, and suffering. Don't rely on insurance companies to look out for you. If you haven't spoken to an attorney, call our legal experts now. Work accident, truck accident, collision with an uninsured driver, or a slip and fall, Allied Injury Group has helped clients win hundreds of millions of dollars in damages. They're available 24/7 to take your call and fight for you. Remember, if you or someone you love suffered injuries in an accident that wasn't your fault, like being struck by a drunk driver, a collision with an 18-wheeler, were a victim of workplace negligence or more, get the financial compensation you deserve. Call Allied Injury Group for a free consultation now.
Call 800-818-2581. That's 800-818-2581. Again, 800-818-2581.
Around the Town, Chicago, with Al Besloff.
We had a very strange thing happen. Right. We were supposed to be talking to Ronnie Marmol, who is back.
Hey, Al, listen, I got a bone to pick with you. I listened to your broadcast last week after the fact, and you threw me under the bus. You acted like you couldn't find me. You guys were calling the wrong number.
I know.
How's that my fault?
At the time, it seemed like I had to do it that way.
No, I saw you threw me right under the bus.
Sunday afternoons at 1 on WCPT 820. You're listening to WCPT 820. Here's the latest Chicago weather update.
From the Weatherology Weather Center, I'm meteorologist Michael Caro. For today, a slight chance for an isolated shower or thundershower ending early on. Otherwise, mostly cloudy, breezy winds turning to the west, temperatures falling into the mid-50s. Then for tonight, mostly clear, a low of 44. For Tuesday, low 70s for high temperatures, more in the way of sunshine, just a slight chance for a hit-or-miss shower or storm developing late in the day. And that's your latest Chicago weather update. Currently, it's 55.
I'm Smokey Bear, and I made an assistant to help you out, because only you can prevent wildfires.
Hey, Assistant Smokey Bear, call me Papa Bear, because I'm grilling up dinner. Do you get it?
Yes, good job.
So, what should I do with all these coals?
Don't just toss them out. Put them in a metal container because those embers can start a wildfire.
I understand. The stakes are high.
Ha, 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 ha.
Learn more at SmokeyBear.com.
Brought to you by the U.S. Forest Service, your state forester, and the Ad Council.
You're listening to WCPT 820, because facts matter.
Welcome back to Choose Views with Richard Chew on WCPT 820, Chicago's Progressive Talk.
Hey, Progressive, welcome back to Choose Views, 773-763-9278. I got a text from someone that says, I don't care what people say and think about what I think and say. I don't give a hoot. People like me. Thanks, Beth. I hear you. Yeah, I don't really. I know where you're coming from. I know there's a lot of folks that are going to troll any of the conversations that are out there. That's part of the game. My responsibility is to bring the message to as many folks as we possibly can, so that we win going forward. All right, strategists have a different take on a lot of things, but one thing that's for sure is their goal is to try to win and to move us forward. With us this morning is political strategist, our good friend Mike Nellis. Good morning, Mike, and welcome to the show.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm good, man. Are you feeling better? I know a couple weeks ago we talked about this last time you were on. You had been fighting through and you gotten better, and hopefully you're moving forward health-wise.
Yeah. I'm just feeling the effects of a holiday weekend and eating too much. Other than that.
You didn't. No, you did. You didn't eat too much. That's not you.
I got a 6-year-old at home. This house is filled with more candy than I know what to do with.
Oh man, see that you got to prioritize. Which candy am I going to allow myself to eat today?
I mean, it was a lot of Hershey's eggs yesterday, just finding them around the house. Unbelievable stuff.
I can imagine. Well, I'm glad you're doing better. I'm glad you're doing well. Hey, listen, man. I guess I'll say kudos to you in an indirect way. And what I mean by that is the success of Barbara Lee with her win in Oakland. Let's talk a little bit about that to the best that you can. She won, and then I mean, I paid loose attention to this, but was this something that you were expecting, or what did you see happening there?
Yeah, so Barbara Lee was one of my oldest clients. I did not work on this mayoral race. She and I parted ways when she ran for Senate because I also had Adam Schiff, and it was just kind of a tough situation between the two of them. But I love Barbara Lee, and she's one of, in my opinion, like one of the best moral leaders we have in the Democratic Party in the country. She cares really deeply for her constituents, and she took a risk on me 10 years ago in my team when she didn't have to. So I'm always intensely loyal, and I'm not surprised that she won. The people of Oakland love her. It was a tough race that she had to win, particularly in the mood of the electorate. But I'm really excited for her, and I think she's going to do some awesome work for Oakland. And Oakland's one of those cities. Chicago's kind of like this too, where conservatives spend a lot of time crapping on it and talking about how horrible of a place it is to live, which is ridiculous. I've been to Oakland. Oakland's amazing. The culture in Oakland is incredible. Chicago, now there's nothing tops Chicago, but Oakland's an amazing place. Barbara Lee will make it better. I'm pretty excited for her.
Yeah, and I appreciate you saying it that way, as so many people do, that, we pick progressive, democratic, liberal cities, and then we almost said the S word. Good Lord.
Mm-hmm.
But no, great.
I came close too. You're not alone.
Man, Mike, that candy must be working on both of us. So listen, man, so let me ask you this question. What do you think she did? What are some of the things that she did to win? I talked earlier, I don't know if you were listening or not, about some things that I believe Dems have to focus on in terms of the Achilles heel of Trump. And I want to come back to something that you talked about. But what do you think that Miss Lee did to win that election, given the environment that you talked about?
Yeah, I think she did what a lot of Democrats are awfully bad at these days, which is localizing everything. And I think that we've gotten awfully far away from remembering that, all voters are self-interested and all politics is local. And which is not a knock on anybody, because I think it makes total sense to be self-interested. People care more about putting food on the table and retiring with dignity. And I think Barbara Lee gets that probably better than any politician I've met, is that everything matters communally, everything matters to the family. And Democrats spend way too much time trying to nationalize everything. And maybe that works enough in presidential elections where we've won, significant number of the last few. Not enough, unfortunately. But we've got to get back to just centering everything on individual people's needs and community needs. And Barbara Lee gets that. And I think especially when you're running for mayor, that matters a lot more. And so you'll find a lot of Democratic strategists that want to come in and they want to make, a local race about everything that's going on nationally, make it about Trump. But Barbara Lee didn't do that. She made it about Oakland, and that's what matters. When I did Michelle Wu's race for Boston mayor 4 years ago, and she's running for re-election now, and the entire race was about the Boston transit system. When I did it, I had to learn an unbelievable amount about Boston's metro, and I probably know more about Boston's metro than I do about Chicago's right now, simply for that reason. And I loved that because it was just, that's how you win. Yeah. You out-local the other person.
So, and particularly in a race like that, and in a mayoral race, but I wanted to get your take on that. So, the national issue, or an issue that certainly you've definitely chimed in on, and I appreciate you taking kind of the hits on this with regard to Senator Van Hollen and what he did in going to El Salvador. You had some thoughts about that. I'd like you to share those with us.
Yeah, I have nothing but respect for Chris Van Hollen after the last week. I think that I would not have told you that I thought Chris Van Hollen would become a moral clarifying leader of the Democratic Party, but here we are. We're in interesting times. And I mean, look, what happened to this man, Kilmar Albrega Garcia, is horrible, and everybody wants to get into an argument. The right wants to get into an argument about whether or not he's a member of a gang, whether or not he's a violent criminal. That's for a court to decide. The details of the case in this instance don't matter. What matters is that everybody in this country is owed due process, whether they're here legally or illegally, whether or not they're an American citizen or a green card holder. Everybody should have an opportunity to face a judge, especially when the government is making accusations against them. The Trump administration does not have the right to just grab people randomly off the streets, separate them from their family. Okay, this man Kilmar has a wife and he has 3 kids, and I believe at least one of his kids has a disability that requires significant attention and support. And they grabbed him. And by the way, he was here with a judge's order saying to keep him here that was pre-existing, and he was doing everything that he was told to do. So they can't even get him for the ICE equivalent of violating your parole, or at least skipping your meeting.
He didn't show up for parole, so now we can grab him. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Right, which is just, I mean, it's ridiculous. And they're doing this in a lot of different ways. I mean, there was a kid over the weekend that I think that got deported because they had a photo of him. I mean, I say kid, I don't actually know how old he was, but a photo of him with like a squirt gun in his hand. You know, they're deporting green card holders because they don't like what they're saying about Palestine. Like, that is not right. And it creates a slippery slope argument because last week in the Oval Office, Donald Trump's talking about, well, we're going to go after homegrowns next, and we're going to start sending them to El Salvador. Well, what's a homegrown to Donald Trump? Is that a political enemy? Is that a guy who, steals a loaf of bread to feed his family? Like, I don't know. And that's why you have a due process, especially because governments make mistakes. The criminal justice system is not perfect. I think it's better than most, but it's not perfect. And so you have a due process to make sure that a judge can check the work that's being done to make sure they get the right person, to make sure that they make the right decisions more often than not.
So, question that is filled with all kinds of context. Why did they say let me put it differently. Why have they dug in their heels, meaning the administration, Carolyn Levitt, Pam Blondie, and why have they dug in their heels on this?
They're afraid. I think politically, Donald Trump is on very tenuous ground. Like, coming in, the two things that most Americans believed that he would be able to do was improve the economy, make things cheaper, create jobs, and then secure our borders. And those are the two things that, like, by a wider margin than I'd care to admit, Donald Trump did better than Democrats. And he's torched his reputation on the economy. He's double-digit underwater in his approval rating on managing the economy, the tariffs, making things more affordable, and he completely owns it. And that alone is a recipe for political disaster because that's 80% of how most people vote. The couple of things that he has majority support on up until now had been immigration. And because people are very frustrated with the Democratic Party's positions and the way that we've approached immigration over the last 4 years, I'm also kind of frustrated with that. I would like us to think a little bit smarter about it. I don't want to get anywhere near what these guys are doing because I think it's cruel and unempathetic, but we got to get smarter about it. And if Donald Trump admits that he made a mistake, he's going to create an avalanche where he's going to lose his majority support for immigration. Now, the challenge is that the way they've handled the last week, where it's very clear that they've made a mistake, where the Supreme Court has ruled 9-0 that they got to bring this guy home, where they've frankly just been acting like jerks about it and almost reveling in it. I mean, they're all over conservative internet right now. They're sharing like a fake image of like MS-13 tattooed on this guy's knuckles, which is not what his hand says. And so they're kind of desperate. And I think that what they're seeing is a slow erosion of Donald Trump's support on immigration because people will say, yes, secure our borders. Yes, get violent criminals out. But no, we don't want to violate people's due process. Like, that is deeply unpopular. And they're losing that ground. And again, he doesn't have any ground left to lose. He's very unpopular. I saw a poll this weekend with his approval rating at 41%, which is very, very low. And I think he's losing people, and they're scared.
What are the things that you feel, and maybe not so feel, but what are the things that you see that the data supports that he's very unpopular right now? I know that sounds like a circular question, but you know what I'm trying to get at.
Yeah. So a couple of things. Like, if you just track his approval rating, like, he probably started in the low 50s. So he had majority support. I think Americans are pretty frustrated with Joe Biden coming out of office. You can feel about that however you want. But people were frustrated, and so they were willing to give him a wider berth, I think particularly because of inflation, but also because of immigration. And he's essentially torched that. Like, the average of the polls over the weekend was something like, 44.5%, which is more popular than Donald Trump was at the beginning of his first term, but is still the most unpopular president in the first 100 days of the modern era. Minus himself. So the only person who can best him is him the first time. So maybe if he gets that third term, he'll finally be able to figure it out.
So he tanked another casino. He's tanking another casino.
Exactly. Right. That's what he knows how to do. And now I've seen his approval rating on immigration. I saw one poll this weekend that had it at 54%. 54% is incredibly low for him on immigration. I've seen another one, a private poll, that has him at like 47%, which puts him underwater. So he's just in trouble. And I think what's really happening is, I don't think that people are trusting Democrats more. I don't think people are loving Democrats more. I think we've got a lot of work left to do to win back people's trust and elevate new leaders who can kind of capture people's attention. However, I think people are looking at this and going, I don't feel more safe. I don't have more money in my pocket. It's not easier to put food on the table. I don't know how I'm going to retire. This is worse. It feels like what happened was Donald Trump inherited a situation on the economy, on immigration that weren't great and needed to be improved, and he's just made it worse at every turn. These guys can't get anything right. Big stuff, small stuff. They can't keep our national security secrets safe. Like Pete Hegseth can't stop texting war plans to like his wife.
And that's what I know you're on a roll.
I can rant about this
I want to go on. I want to ask you about what the hell needs to happen with Pete Hegseth. I mean, it's a common sense answer, but this is now like a family. I don't want to say this. This is like a picnic, and he's just inviting, his cousin Johnny to come. Hey man, come sit with me so we can talk about what we're going to do to a country in a far off place. I mean, come on.
I mean, he needs to be fired, and there's no other recourse but firing this guy, because he was wholly unqualified to take the job, and Senate Republicans especially knew this, and that's why Senator Tom Tillis from North Carolina had such trouble voting for him, and God knows what they promised Tillis to do it, but he sold out his constituents by being the deciding vote for Hegseth, and I hope that costs him politically next year. Hegseth doesn't know what he's doing. He doesn't have the temperament for the job. He doesn't have frankly, I don't think he has the critical thinking skills to think through the decisions that he's making. Like, why was he creating a text thread with his wife and his brother and his personal lawyer to share war plans? The only thing I can think of is that he thought if he put his personal lawyer on it, it became privileged information. That's the only thing I can think of, which tells me that he has no idea how the law works. None. And Secretary of Defense is a big job. Like, look, there are jobs in the federal government that you can give people that are political, that like you love them, they're loyal to you, they did something for you, and give it to them. And it's okay, they might not be great at it. But Secretary of Defense is not one of those jobs. And you just can't have somebody so incompetent in a role like this. I saw a tweet earlier today that put it into context for me really, really well, which is if Pete Hegseth worked at KFC and he texted his wife the plans to the chicken, the secret plans, he'd be fired right now. And they'd be right to fire him.
And that's far less, no dissing of KFC and the legendary privacy around the recipe, but that's far less critically important to the safety of the United States of America. But that's a great comparison. And let's be honest, Mike, not that we're not being honest, but let's be out front with this. That seems to be consistent with much of the cabinet. I mean, pick who you want to go after. Pam Bondi is just another example, different job of Pete Hegseth in her lack of qualification, other than having a law degree. I mean, there's a lot of people. And again, this is a political appointment selection that's been verified by, as much as we can, have our issues with how Democrats have navigated through this and should be doing more. The Republicans are the ones that are carrying the bag on all of this that's happening right now, because they're the ones that are standing in the way of the checks and balances systems that are in place, that are constitutionally enshrined. They're breaching the Constitution.
If the only thing you care about when you're assembling a team is loyalty to you over competence, you're going to hire idiots who aren't going to tell you the truth, who aren't going to be able to execute your vision. Whether I agree with the vision or not is irrelevant. Like, these guys can't execute what they're trying to do, and people are going to get hurt. And you see that play out all across federal government. Our aviation right now is a mess. People are afraid to fly. We've got planes that are crashing every day, it feels like, and it's completely absurd. Pam Bondi is probably, in my opinion, one of the most qualified members of the Trump administration, even if I don't particularly care for her. At least she served in a role in her state of Florida where she'd done that job before. But let's compare her not just to Hegseth, whose biggest qualification for this, by the way, is that he was a Fox News host on Donald Trump's favorite TV show. But let's go look at like Kash Patel and Dan Bajingo, the two that are running the FBI right now. Neither of them have ever worked at the FBI. Neither of them have ever really worked anywhere close to anything that important. And what they are their media personalities. Like Bajingo is and I might be saying his name wrong, I don't care.
Bongino.
But, Bongino, I don't know.
Yeah.
But I should really know.
That's okay.
But he's a podcast host. He's a conspiracy theorist online. Patel is a Fox News correspondent, or is not Fox News pundit, is basically what he is, with a pack that sells Donald Trump merchandise. And these are the guys that Donald Trump saw fit to put in charge of the government, and then the Senate Republicans saw fit to approve and put these guys in positions of power. So this is just This is what happens, and nobody is more safe. Nobody should feel more safe, and we're definitely not safe. It's unbelievable. And if there was a Democratic version of this where we were putting people so wholly unqualified, like if they appointed me like Secretary of Defense because whoever we elected liked me, that would be wrong. I would say no.
Yeah, I'm not. And that's again. We have the unique perspective and responsibility to point out where we're not doing it as well as we could as progressive liberal Democrats. We just do. We own that. And when I say we is defined by people like you, people like me, people like Eric Grant, people like Joan Esposito, Patty, Edwin, the whole list of us. We all have a responsibility to point out what we're not doing well, find a manner and a way in which we can make it better and fix it, and then go forward. I think I love the way that you articulated how Barbara Lee has she's locked into that in terms of a local election, a mayoral election, and winning. And I think that we have to take that kind of energy along with some self-evaluation and saying, how do we take that kind of energy and then move us forward? Because we can't rely on the Republican Party to do their job because they're clearly showing that they're not capable or unwilling to do their job.
No, I mean they're not. And I think we have to acknowledge as Democrats that a functioning society doesn't give way to electing a man like Donald Trump president once, let alone twice.
Absolutely.
And we elect a guy like that because people want to see the system broken, because the system doesn't work for them. And we saw erosions, basically everywhere. We lost voters. We lost black male voters. We lost Hispanic male voters. We lost a little bit of black women voters. We lost, basically everywhere. The only place I actually saw Kamala Harris gain. And by the way, I don't believe this is Kamala Harris's fault. I think she was handed a really difficult electoral situation with 100 days to go. But we had marginal improvement with white men in the election. It was the only place that was a bit of a bright spot. And most of that is inflation, and I recognize that. But we've made a lot of mistakes, and we lost to Trump 8 years ago. In 2016, we lost to him again, a couple months ago. Our institutions are failing us. One of those institutions is the Democratic Party, and we have to get back to a place where we understand that politics is just about the improvement of people's lives. And everything that we need to do has to have this relentless, endless urgency to help people put food on the table, retire with dignity, start a family, put their kids through college, et cetera, because it's getting harder out there. And what's happening right now is we have, I saw a comedian this weekend at the Chicago Theater, and he put it this way that I really liked, which was, we had, everything's more expensive, service sucks, the deliverables suck, and it's also that 5 billionaires can have more money and seem miserable about it the entire time.
Well, and the crazy thing about the last part in terms of seem miserable about it is that's a highlight point that I don't think enough people are talking about. That they've captured the kingdom, if you will, and they're still PO'd about it every single day. And
right.
And that's a part of this that candidly no one talks about enough. So, what comedy show did you go and see?
It was a comedian named Stavros. He's one of these bro podcaster comedians. But okay. I saw him shortly after the election, and he was on a Theo Von show. Is another one of those guys. And Theo Von voted for Trump. He was at the inauguration, and Stavros was like, "I voted for Harris, and here's why." And then he articulated it better than I'd seen any Democrat make the argument in the last year. And I went, "When's this guy coming to Chicago? I'm throwing him $100."
There you go.
I was like, I need to see this. And he was really great though.
Well, Mike, listen, you cannot eat any more of this candy that's sitting around the house.
No.
Got to stop that. But it's great to have you on. I appreciate you taking the time to talk through some of the things that are happening, and make it a good week. And we will hopefully talk to you again in 2 weeks.
Of course. Thanks for having me.
All right. Talk to you soon. Bye now.
Bye.
Political strategist Mike Nellis and comedy show attendee as well. Good to have Mike on and to kind of break some things down in a way that I think Mike does a good job at, and certainly always good to hear from him. So, listen, guys, I've had a really interesting, kind of online conversation this morning, and I've done my best to respond to as many of the text messages that I've received. But one of the things that Mike just said, and I got a text from someone that says, "What will most voters here understand and be concerned about?" And this person is saying, rather than enjoy the harm, people do care about their 401ks, property value, and all things economic. And the reality is what we want and need is as many voters as possible that feel similarly. I get that. So going back to part of what Mike said about where the party needs to ramp up, and I'm not going to say fail, but where the party needs to ramp up. When we incorporate the reality that racism had the huge impact and sexism had the huge impact and time had the huge impact on this past election and now where we are today, we still can't get away from the fact that to the text that I received that says that we all do care about those items, those 401ks, those property values, those economic items. Those are consistent items across the board for so many people. Mike highlighted that as well. And so as a Democratic Party, I keep coming back to this for a reason. We have to stay focused on those Achilles heel items that are connective tissue items that allow us to say, this is part of our common message. Okay? I could go into the second level of communicating about why the economy matters more to some people than others. And that gets into how culture, community, gender has made it more difficult. Or in other words, racism and sexism have made it more difficult for people to thrive in the economy that we do have. So for someone to think for a minute that we don't get it when it comes to talking about racism and sexism and what it played into and how it's played into this this most recent election, there's some list right there that acknowledges that we understand that. We just have to do a better job of highlighting it as we go forward and what we're going to do. What are going to be the solutions to fixing those issues? Okay. Voter turnout, to going back to what Beth said in the text, voter turnout. We need as many voters as possible. We need people off the sidelines and in the mix is critically important. And if it's going to be economic issues that are going to bring people off the sidelines, if it's going to be, because I don't buy into for a minute that Kamala Harris didn't have a good platform or that any elected officials that we've gotten elected in the past didn't have a good platform. Bless you, Devin. I do buy into the fact that more people need to be in the voting process. And I've said this a number of times, and I'll say it again and again, because it's the truth. You can't have 36% of the voting population not show up for an election. Okay, that means they didn't vote for anybody, whether they didn't vote for Trump or they didn't vote for Harris. Keep that in mind, critics. They didn't vote for either. We want them to vote for the candidate that we think will do a better job, which is our candidate with better ideas. And to go back to what Mike Nellis just said a moment ago, Barbara Lee captured that. She made it local. She made it personal. And that's what, in terms of money, that's personal. In terms of gender, that's personal. In terms of community, of culture, that's personal. So if there's a lesson to be learned, maybe I broaden it to say we make it more personal. And in that, we include racism, sexism, nationalism, privilege. And oh, by the way, what did Mike say? The economy. Or as James Carville has said, it's the economy, stupid. So let's put that in our DNA and make that part of what we're doing to move this conversation forward effectively to get wins on a local, regional, and national level. I'll tell you one thing that I'm promising. I'm committed to that. But as we come to the end of the show, Devin says stop talking with the music. You guys take a deep breath and make your life count. We'll see you tomorrow.
Are you tired of talking to yourself? We can get you an audience on the radio. You can produce and host your own radio show on one of our 2 stations. Please call 773-792-1121. That's 773-792-1121 and ask for Mark. Limited space available.
Check up on health with Chris Whitting.
Parents want to provide the best for their kids. Nutritionist Kelly Dorfman says parents need to put more thought into their child's diet.
It's more powerful than they think. Like most people think about nutrition as related to calories, and so they think they might get heavy if they eat too many Twinkies, but they don't think about